Ladies and gentlemen, saddle up and hold on to your hats as we embark on a journey through the Wild West, exploring the life of a man whose story is as thrilling as a high-speed stagecoach chase. Meet Isam Dart, a name that might not ring a bell immediately, but by the end of this tale, you'll wonder why Hollywood hasn't made a blockbuster about him yet. A star is born, or is he? Our tale begins in the mid-19th century, a time when the American frontier was a wild, untamed land filled with fortune seekers, outlaws, and rugged cowboys trying to carve out a place in the great unknown. It was an era when men with quick reflexes and even quicker wits thrived, where the difference between being a legend and being forgotten often hinged on who told the story. For decades, it was believed that Isam Dart, also known as Ned Huddleston, was born into slavery in Arkansas in 1849. According to these accounts, young Ned was taken to Texas by his Confederate owner during the Civil War, a journey that exposed him to the brutal realities of war and survival. Some claim he played an unusual role, honing his skills in liberating supplies for the troops. Now, whether he was a Robin Hood figure or just an opportunistic youngster taking advantage of the chaos, we may never know. But one thing's for certain, he developed a knack for staying one step ahead of trouble. After the war, with freedom in hand and a taste for adventure, he headed westward like many African Americans, seeking opportunities beyond the oppressive South. The frontier was a place where one could redefine themselves, and Dart certainly did. He was known to dabble in everything from rodeo clowning. Imagine him dodging bulls in an era where safety gear was just "don't get hit," to more daring exploits, such as cattle rustling. Over time, he would become an exceptional horseman and a respected cowboy, but his reputation always seemed to carry a hint of outlaw mystique. However, modern historians have taken a deeper look into his origins, and recent research has thrown a lasso around this version of events and given it a firm yank. The Museum of Northwest Colorado, after examining historical records, presents evidence that Dart may not have been born in Arkansas at all. Instead, records suggest that he was born around 1858 in Sigmund, Texas, a small town known for its diverse population of Hispanics, Native Americans, blacks, and whites. His father, Cyrus Dart, was reportedly a farmer, meaning Isam likely grew up knowing hard work and responsibility from an early age. Unlike the story of a boy growing up amid war and slavery, this version paints a different picture, one of a young man learning the ropes of ranching, mastering the art of riding, and possibly earning an honest living before he ventured into the more dangerous aspects of frontier life. By his teenage years, Dart had already made a name for himself as a skilled cattle wrangler. Whether he always played by the rules, though, is another question entirely. From cowboy to cattle rustler, a career path only the Wild West could offer. Regardless of his origins, one thing is certain: Dart had a penchant for adventure, and maybe a tendency to forget that cattle belonged to other people. In an era when cowboys were idolized for their grit, skill, and ability to thrive in a harsh landscape, Dart stood out. He became known as a skilled bronco buster, a horse whisperer of sorts, and an exceptional rider and roper. His talents earned him the admiration of fellow cowboys and ranchers, and he was often described as a top hand among cowboys, the kind of man you wanted on your team during a long cattle drive. But as every Western fan knows, the line between cowboy and outlaw was often as thin as a horsehair rope. As land disputes, cattle theft, and economic struggles swept across the West, many hardworking men found themselves tempted by the lucrative, if illegal, trade of cattle rustling. After all, rounding up stray cattle and rebranding them as your own wasn't just a crime. To some, it was an art. Dart, along with his close friend Matt Rash, found himself tangled in the world of cattle rustling. Unlike common thieves, though, Dart was known to have a moral compass, albeit a flexible one. He wasn't a violent outlaw looking to stir up trouble. He was a cowboy first, a rustler second. Many believe he only stole from the wealthy ranchers who had more than they needed, rather than from small struggling ranchers. Still, in the unforgiving law of the West, rustling was rustling, and it made Dart a wanted man in certain circles. Despite accusations of cattle theft, Dart was never actually convicted of any crime. His charm, quick wit, and ability to make friends in high places seemed to work in his favor. In one instance, after being arrested by a deputy sheriff, fate decided to intervene in the most dramatic way possible, just as if the scene had been written for a Hollywood movie. As the deputy sheriff was transporting Dart in a wagon down a treacherous mountain road, disaster struck. The wagon suddenly slipped off the rocky path, toppling down the rugged terrain. The sheriff was seriously injured, unable to move, and likely fearing for his life. Dart, instead of taking this as his golden opportunity to escape, did something unexpected. He rescued the deputy, pulled him to safety, and provided first aid right there on the mountainside. When they eventually made it back to civilization, the deputy testified on Dart's behalf in court, praising his character and loyalty. As a result, Dart was acquitted. Now, if that isn't the most cowboy thing you've ever heard, I don't know what is. Dart's actions in that moment reflected the complexity of his character. He was a man who lived on the edge of the law but still adhered to his own code of honor. He had the skills of an outlaw but the heart of a cowboy, a combination that made him one of the most fascinating figures of the Old West. Brown's Park, a sanctuary for outlaws and outcasts. In the 1880s, Dart found his way to Brown's Park, a remote valley straddling the borders of Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah. This secluded area was a haven for outlaws, offering refuge from the long arm of the law. Dart worked for Herb and Elizabeth Bassett, a ranching family whose daughters, Josie and Ann, would later gain notoriety for their associations with Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch. While working for the Bassetts, Dart took on various roles, from ranch hand to cook, and even babysitter for the Bassett children. He was known to entertain the kids with his harmonica and fiddle playing, and he taught them how to ride and rope. The Colorado Range War, when cattle disputes turned deadly. As the 19th century drew to a close, tensions in the cattle industry were as high as a saloon's top-shelf whiskey. Large ranchers accused smaller operators and independent cowboys of rustling their cattle. To protect their interests, these big-time ranchers hired Tom Horn, a stock detective with a reputation for delivering swift, and often lethal, justice. Horn was promised $500 for every rustler he eliminated, a lucrative deal in those days. Dart and his partner, Matt Rash, found themselves in Horn's crosshairs. On July 8, 1900, Rash was found dead, and suspicion quickly fell on Horn. Fearing for his life, Dart invited friends, including Sam and George Bassett, to stay at his cabin atop Cold Spring Mountain, hoping safety lay in numbers. But on the morning of October 3, 1900, as Dart stepped out of his cabin, a shot rang out, and he fell dead. The Bassetts heard the gunfire but saw no assailant. Dart was buried near his cabin, and his leather wrist cuffs were removed by Eb Bassett. These cuffs would later become a significant artifact, symbolizing Dart's life and untimely death. The man, the myth, the misconceptions. For decades, Dart's story was shrouded in inaccuracies, largely stemming from W.G. Titsworth's 1927 book, Outskirt Episodes. This work portrayed Dart as a former slave from Arkansas named Minute Huddleston, a narrative that has since been debunked. Modern research, particularly by the Museum of Northwest Colorado, has clarified many of these misconceptions, painting a more accurate picture of Dart's life. Legacy: the cowboy who refused to be forgotten. Isam Dart: life is a testament to the complexities of the American West, a place where the lines between hero and outlaw were often blurred. He was a man of many talents, navigating a world that was as unforgiving as it was exhilarating. Today, his story serves as a reminder of the diverse characters who shaped the frontier and the enduring allure of the Wild West. So the next time you find yourself in a dusty old saloon, nursing a glass of whiskey, raise a toast to Isam Dart, a cowboy, a rustler, and an enduring legend of the American frontier. And there you have it, folks, the incredible, wild, and downright legendary story of Isam Dart. But what do you think? Was Isam Dart a misunderstood cowboy trying to make a living in a ruthless world, or was he an outlaw who played the game a little too well? Let us know in the comments below. If you love stories of the Wild West, unsung legends, and history with a twist, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive into history's most fascinating figures.